Hey, this is Evan Marquette, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women, your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast, where you can learn everything there is to know about dating, relationships, sex, and men from a man's point of view. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you go to Spotify, go to Apple, subscribe, leave us a positive review. You can leave us a negative review, but the positive ones are more appreciated. And if you are a longtime listener, you're really in for a treat today. I try to switch things up here. I'll do an occasional interview with another expert, um, go on a 15, 20-minute rant about a topic. Strangely, after 7 years of podcasting, one thing I've never done is have one of my former clients on the podcast, which seems like a very serious omission. So starting today and maybe semi-regularly in the not so distant future, I'm going to be interviewing women who've worked with me and have had positive experiences. The people who've had negative experiences will not be coming here for an interview, but the people who've had positive experiences and found successful relationships are going to come here and they're going to tell their story. And it's not going to be the short version of it. The short version of it, the 15-minute version of it, isn't that interesting. So we're going to be going deep. We're going to be talking about where people were when they met me, what they went through while they were coaching with me, and where they are now. So I'm really going to encourage you to stick around for the whole thing. Today, my guest is Rachel. I'm not going to provide her last name. I'm not going to give any more identifying information that is necessary. But I'm going to allow my interview with Rachel to tell her story. So, my dear friend Rachel, would you be kind enough to share as much as you're willing to share about where you live, what you do, how old you are?
Sure. I'm Rachel. I am from South Florida, so the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. I'm 43 now. I went through the program in 2020. I was 39. So that was a few years ago. And yeah, I'm still very active in the group. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but I listen to your podcast, just about every single one that comes out, because even though I feel like I've absorbed everything I could get from the program, I feel like it's still beneficial to have the reinforcement of the concepts. And even though I'm in a relationship, it still, whoops, is
Did you just
valuable.
fall off your chair? What happened there?
No, my webcam seems to keep slipping. Like if I breathe too hard towards my computer, it slips. So
That was funny.
I'll try not to do that. There we
It's
go.
all right. It's all right. Well, again, I had no idea you were still listening.
Yeah.
That means the world. The fact that we have a relationship outside of coaching means the world to me too. But I really want to get people into where you were back in 2020. At that point in time, what were you feeling? What was your biggest fear, limiting belief? What was the thing that you thought, in retrospect, was the thing that was preventing you from making a good connection?
Yeah, I was single for like a year or two when I came to you. And I noticed a pattern where I would meet guys, I would, date them for a month, 2 months. And it seemed like we were moving in the same direction. We were talking a lot. We would get to the point where it felt like, okay, we should be sleeping together. And then when we would get to that point, it was usually around the 2 month mark. So, or when this would happen. So it's not like this was happening date two, where maybe things might be a little early to have any sense of where we're going. And so we would get to that point, we would sleep together, and then things would sort of just fade away eventually. And it was happening over and over. And I couldn't really understand what was happening. And I figured, not that I'm the problem, but there's obviously something I'm doing that I'm not realizing is ineffective or not getting me to my goal. So, and some of the guys that this was happening with, it was making me mad because I'm like, they're not. I felt like they might not be the cream of the crop that should be ghosting me, for lack of a better word. So I was like, what am I doing? What am I not seeing that this is happening?
So these guys are doing the slow fade, and then and to be really clear, that's so normal, right? That's a lot of that's just dating, and it's not unique to you, but that was your life experience. Um,
Well, and it was
uh,
just happening like over and over and over. So it's like, what is going on?
And
Something's.
how did that make you feel?
How did that make me feel? I have to go back then. I mean, it definitely felt like there were moments where I felt like it's got to be me. It's, there's something about me that people are not connecting with or that men don't want to be in a relationship with. So that part was hard. I came to you when it was like the last straw with one of them. We were getting really close, and he just sort of like had an emotional freak out where he was like, I really, really feel things for you, and I didn't expect us to get this close, and I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of thing. And also, he wanted me to be a native Spanish speaker, and that seemed to be something that he was really hung up on. And so he said he needed to go to therapy and ended things with me. Uh, and that one was one where we were pretty, connected. So,
Did you have a type? Did you have a pattern? Like there was the pattern of I'm choosing men who are not fully invested in me, but uh, looking back, was there a thing that you were doing in your choice of men that led to that outcome?
um, knowing what I know now about Love You, there were things that I was doing that weren't helping. But as far as the men themselves,
Mhm.
I don't know if there was anything about them. They weren't all a certain type or a certain height or a certain, there was nothing about them that was consistent. I think it was more my approach to dating that was the problem. And some of the men were maybe not, I want to say like on my level or at my caliber that I was allowing to get through the funnel and then expecting there to be a relationship, and that was probably not the most effective either.
Got it. So you would find guys who and we're allowed to say that here. We're not
Okay.
finding guys. The podcast is for smart, strong, successful, high achieving women who have lots of things
Mhm.
going for them. So no disrespect to anybody who does not have that. And so you're not finding guys at your level, and you were accepting that. You're saying, well, this is workable. Um,
Mhm.
did
Yeah.
you ever have a significant relationship? Were you in love at any time in your 20s and 30s that is worth mentioning?
I mean, yeah, I had a string of long-term relationships. I had one out of like I guess my first adult relationship after grad school, somebody that I knew all through college that we got together. And that one, I mean, looking back, that was not a good relationship for me. He wasn't a bad guy, but we just were not connected at all.
Mm,
And everybody hated us together because they could see that I wasn't happy. But I think I stayed because he had the things. He had a good family, he had a good career, he owned his own house, he was, you know, the tall enough and all the things. And he wasn't a bad guy, but we just did like I felt like he tolerated me. It was a very lonely relationship where I wasn't happy, but I stayed because I didn't think I was capable or worthy, I guess, of anything better. I thought that was as good as it could get.
and so what ages were you? How many years were you there?
28 to 33. And we did break up in the middle.
Sure.
But like the most, formative of your relationship years, I spent with somebody who was not a good match at all. And I didn't make me, and that didn't make me happy.
I don't I don't know this, and you're obviously free to not answer this because these are personal questions. Did you have good relationship role models growing up?
My parents were together until I was like 22. My dad was present. He was my softball coach, or he tried, he was like a volunteer coach for the softball group. He wasn't the coach, but he was there. And my parents, tried to check my homework and set curfews, and so they were there.
Well, they were
Um,
there for you. How is their relationship?
yeah, they didn't have a good relationship. I wanted them to get divorced for the longest time. I remember my bat mitzvah was a stressful time and we were all fighting, and I wished that they would just like get divorced already. And so that was 10 years before they actually even did. And so they just never really seemed in love. Kind of seemed to tolerate each other. My dad is not like a strong masculine man. He's a very nice person, but not like strong masculine presence. And then my mom is sometimes emotionally impulsive. So she could fly off the handle if you say the wrong thing, and then she shuts the door and locks you out and stone walls. And so that's what I
Yeah.
experienced.
So, I mean, again, what I enjoy about these kind of conversations is that the dots actually quickly start to connect, whether you intend that or not.
Yeah.
The fact that you grew up in a relationship where the parents tolerated each other, and that your most significant relationship you described as he tolerated me,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That became your normal. You don't have to be a shrink. Like that became your normal. Like this is apparently how relationships are, is two people are together and they tolerate each other, but they don't enjoy each other. It's not necessarily fun. You don't necessarily feel good. You just stick it out. And so if your parents stuck it out for that long, that was a template for you to follow.
Yeah, and I remember even feeling for the longest time that when you would hear people talk about being in love or being really happy or see things on movies, I thought that was fake. Like I didn't think it was real. I didn't think that was possible, or I thought people were kind of lying to themselves
Mm.
about how happy they were or could be or should be or what have you. I thought that that doesn't exist.
So you might have already said this, but I want to get to the emotional piece of it. What was the low point that made you either seek out help or seek out coaching or pull the trigger on signing up? What actually happened, and what led you to take action? Because most people who are listening actually
Mhm.
want help. They're just not taking action. They're passively
Um,
listening and trying to figure out how they could do this on their own. And
mhm.
so, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? You said there was a breakup, but can you give us a little context from that?
Yeah, I mean that breakup happened. I was 33.
Mhm.
And it was because I met somebody at work who seemed really interested in who I was in a way that my boyfriend wasn't. And so I didn't date that person until after I had ended the relationship, but it woke me up to make me realize that, hey, there can be somebody who cares about me a little bit better than this person who's supposed to be my potential future partner, my future. And so, but that was 33. So then I dated that guy for a brief moment. And then I had two other significant relationships after that over the couple years. One of them was 2 years long, and the next one was 1 year long. And one of them I knew from college. So another person that I happened to know. So I knew his background. He was a good person, but he went through a lot of heavy family stuff that I think eventually ended up being a catalyst for our breakup because he needed to really focus on the family. They had a lot that they needed to manage emotionally. And then the next one had a really unhealthy relationship with his family that I think became a barrier for us to move forward. And so I started doing a like a mindset class, or this is around 2018, and that helped me to start thinking about shifting my mindset from negative thoughts to positive thinking. So recognizing how to reframe if you start to say, there's a whole chapter on money, like money's so hard, or I never have any money, how to shift those thoughts to not have those recurring negative beliefs. And so that was really the start, I think, of when things happened. And I ended up breaking up with the relationship where he had an unhealthy relationship with his family. Like he lived at home at 40 kind of thing, and was like the parentified child.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I was single for a couple years, and I was looking back thinking, okay, I had this one relationship where I wasn't really happy during the most formative kind of relationshipy years. And then I had these two relationships where both of them had like very heavy or intense family scenarios that maybe, and I sort of knew about getting to know them in the beginning, that I probably shouldn't have gotten involved with. I should have, like, I knew, and I still moved forward. And so I thought, what, I'm obviously overlooking things that maybe I shouldn't. And same thing like with some of the guys in that next 2 years from 2018 until I came to you, where I was giving people a chance who didn't really measure up all the way. And then I realized I had given these two partners a chance that had things that were big barriers into being good partners. And I finally had that one where I thought finally he was a good guy and we were going to have something significant, and he ended it anyway. And that one was really crushing. And I recognized it was something I was doing because I was making these choices. And that I had a friend who I was seeing somebody who was very toxic, and I needed to get out of it. And somebody had sent her one of your articles on kind of your 5 important pillars of what you should look for in a person: the kindness, consistency, communication, commitment, and wait, what's the last one? Chemistry?
Character.
Character. Okay, that's funny because that's like my most important thing that I look for in a person. But yes, character. And so she had sent me that, and I started listening. I think I got your newsletters, and then in your newsletters you had videos, and I was listening to your videos. And you were not the first dating coach person that I was following. There were a couple others that I was following, and that I had bought like some of their materials, like the book or something, or the audio. I think it was the audio book of a couple of them. And they had good things to say, but it didn't resonate with me enough to pursue anything further than the book that I bought. And then I just started listening to yours, and I felt like your stuff was so practical and straightforward. It wasn't the clickbait of send these 5 text messages to make him fall in love, or and it wasn't the just be different, which is not easy to do. Like sure, just be the warrior princess. That's not somebody's, but it was kind of like a mentality. Like
Sure.
that's not helping me recognize what I'm doing wrong. So that's the whole path. I mean, that was probably almost, I started dating the 5-year relationship. It was like 2010 so that was like a 10-year process for me to get to a point or even an 8-year process where I started to realize, okay, there's something that I'm doing that's ineffective. And I started to see that I needed to go through some personal development to have better insight and be more introspective and recognize how to manage myself and my relationships better. So it was a process. It wasn't like overnight.
So remind me, when we worked together, we worked together privately, or were you just part of the group?
Both privately and part of the group.
Okay, so you made a serious investment in yourself.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that? Like, what gave you the confidence to do that? Where, again, most people sort of sit on the sidelines and say, I should be able to figure this out myself, right? Lots of people fall in love without spending money. Why should I have to spend money? I mean, that's the sort of the default.
I mean, I was like 38 or 39 by then, so that was part of it, right? We're so conditioned that the window for women is like 30 to 35 max, and then after that, it's like too late. So I think I probably had some of that urgency that I'm getting closer to my 40s, and nothing has panned out. And then, to be honest, I think what really helped was I scheduled a consultation with you. You probably remember this, once I start sharing. But I scheduled a consultation with you, and it was on the day that the guy and I were supposed to meet up for lunch. And I knew that it was either going to be a talk with he and I where we were going to move forward, and I would want coaching to help me not ruin the relationship, or it was going to be a day where he broke up and I would need help to figure out how to date more effectively. And I was scheduled with you as he and I were finishing our conversation, and I was bawling, because he broke up with me. And you were so patient, which was, I was just not a good, I was like a terrible
It
prospect.
wasn't your best first date with me.
Not only that, but I was late. So you kept pinging me and calling me, and you're like, are you joining? What's going on? Yeah, I'll be right there in 5 minutes. And you waited, and you like kept the space for me. And then instead of the normal 45 minutes, like you actually stayed on the phone with me for a lot longer and talked to me about what I was looking for and what was going on and why I was here. I mean, you did your normal spiel that you do with prospects on the consultation call, but the fact that you were like a human that stayed on the call with me, that talked to me, that let me cry, I think that that helped me feel like you would be a good coach because I think people probably assume, not assume, but like you, to a lot of people, you're just a face, a celebrity, whatever. And then meeting you made me realize that you are a real human who wants to help people because you did. You sat on the call with me, you let me cry. I know we went way over the allotted time. And that made me feel like if I signed up, that you would do that. I mean, you talk about that when you explain the program, that you'll be the boyfriend that we need and you'll be there for us and so on and so forth. But I feel like you demonstrated it in a way that made me feel confident that it would be worthwhile to sign up.
Got it. Um,
Remember me bawling on
no,
the call.
you know what? Not to diminish it, but I don't remember that, and I've had that happen a bunch of times, but I associate you with our relationship after that. I don't remember the origin of it, so thank you for reminding me of that story, Rachel. Um, so you sign up for Love you sign up for coaching. We don't have to go through the whole thing, but what are the things that you remember from our experience together? And again, this is not necessarily a pitch for Love You as much as what did you as an individual learn from coaching, from the materials? I know there's things that are sort of quotable in there that you could draw upon because you've continued this. Does anything come quickly to mind as your biggest takeaways?
Oh yeah, there was something about the program that like helped me shift. You talk a lot about the CEO mindset. And I think a lot of us who go through the program really take that to heart and learn how to put it into practice more, and there's something about the program for me that sort of shifted and gave me permission now to do these things, like to be the CEO and make decisions, to rule people out if they weren't stepping up to the plate, and demonstrating that they wanted the job. So those were some of the things. And it also gave me permission. Like I realized looking back that, and I have said this to friends, but I didn't put it into practice. And Love You gave me the permission to put into practice, not to sleep with somebody until we are very clearly boyfriend and girlfriend. Because what I realized was happening was, and those other people where we were together for enough time, 6 weeks, 2 months, where it felt like we were in a relationship, that was never discussed. And so that meant if they went on a date, they were technically entitled. If I didn't know if I was going to see them or hear from them, that's because we weren't in a relationship and nothing had been communicated. And so I realized what would happen is we would be together for a certain amount of time. We would sleep together. And then I would have these relationship expectations that were never agreed upon or communicated. And then they would kind of back away because they would feel that pressure that was not agreed upon. So it wasn't that I was the problem, it's that I was approaching it incorrectly. And so I realized how much that rule alone, and I've seen it now. I've had two relationships since I've been in Love You, one that I met during the process and one that I'm in now. And both of them, I put that to the test and they both did exactly what you would want. I talked to them about me not wanting to sleep with somebody until I'm in a relationship. And there were a couple of other people that I was talking to at the same time. The other people would say things like, oh, that's weird, or I don't do that, or I like to just hang out and see how things go, which we know is not effective, and that's kind of a cop out. Whereas my last relationship and this current one, we're both like, okay, that's great. And they totally honored it when there was that opportunity to get into it. And we had already had the discussion. They said, I get it, no problem. They didn't push me. And then when it was time, they stuck around until we got to that point. It was really like such a clear indicator of who's relationship worthy and who's not. But the CEO
It's just a matter,
mindset.
but the key thing, the key takeaway, and definitely don't want to interrupt. The key
Yeah.
takeaway from everything you're saying is there was nothing wrong with you. It
Mhm.
was just a matter of changing the order of events, right? In this case, you chose to get a commitment from a guy before there was sex, as opposed to sleeping with someone and then keeping your fingers crossed that he committed. Because
Mhm.
too many times they did not commit, and that's why you would get the slow fade after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks was okay, this is good, but if you really want me to be your boyfriend, I wasn't really signing up for that. I was never really signing up for that.
Yeah, 100%. And it was that I was not doing things super effectively because I wasn't in that CEO mindset. I was like a lot of women who like you said, we hope and pray that they'll choose us, and we don't do anything to set those boundaries or communicate what we need. And that's not effective either. You know, it should be, an adult and a person with needs, and I shouldn't forego those needs to hope and pray that some guy who hasn't demonstrated that he's worth my time is choosing me versus me choosing them because I want to pick the right person.
I like emphasizing that. These are themes that come up often in coaching. There's a
Mhm.
huge difference, and a lot of women listening are used to being chosen by a guy, right? You're single, you're lonely, he's cute, he comes along, he says, I want you to be my girlfriend. You're like, well, I've got nothing better, so sure. And then you're getting on a train, and you really don't even know where that train is going, but you get on because it's the only train in town. So
And
too many.
really, he doesn't ask to be your girlfriend. He asks to hang out, and maybe I'll not talk to anybody or date anybody else, but doesn't usually even ask to be your boyfriend.
Right. And the whole point is, but you're consenting to be chosen. Yes, you need a man to choose you. You don't want, right? Like, but it's a more active process. That's why I like
Yeah.
the concept of the CEO. We're interviewing guys to see who's a good fit for the job, not just taking the first intern who shows up at the door saying,
Mhm.
I'm out of work, you know. So you've mentioned CEO mindset. You've mentioned what we call sexclusivity.
Mhm.
You mentioned the 5 Cs. Anything
Mhm.
else from your time here that still sticks with you that you continue to apply in your current relationship?
Well, I just want to add before the relationship, even with the dating phase, something that I also think was really important is kind of like leaning back and watching behaviors over time. Because I think what happens too sometimes is we go on a date or we see somebody online and we think that they look great or they show up and they seem great. And so we're all in, we're ready after 2 dates. But if you lean back and you observe how they approach dating you, how they step up over time, a couple more weeks, it doesn't have to be 3 months, it can be 4 weeks or so. That I think is really important and something that I did and I put into practice regularly is okay, he seems really great. Like I was telling somebody about my boyfriend now. On the first date, we had a great time. We got along. It was really easy. I really enjoyed him, but I knew not to get too invested yet. He was just a person. He was just a guy, he seems great, but how many times has somebody seen great and then not be? And even after I think our third date or so, and I told him how I like this exclusivity thing, and he was like, "Well, I'm done. I'm good to not date anybody else." We didn't have the full relationship conversation. We kind of said he's not interested in talking to anyone else at the moment. But again, I knew still a little early. It's only 3 dates. Gave it a little more time. And saw him consistently communicate with me. He's if you want to get like he's more of a secure attachment style. So his messages to me and between dates and setting up dates were, I'm really excited to see you. I have such a great time with you. Like and he's still this way. It's been a little over 6 months. He's always just up front and paying attention to that and that communication style and how I always felt the absence of anxiety. That one is a really big one that I still take with me from the program.
The
Those are all.
absence of anxiety that having a healthy relationship, you're not on edge all the time, wondering about when he's going to call or what you should say or
Yeah. And even I joke with him that I'm like a recovering anxious because I can recognize and sort of override some of the anxious tendencies. It still happens, right? Like when you're healed or what have you, it doesn't go away. You just learn how to manage those triggers a little better, and they still happen. But what's nice is even if I do have like an anxious thing that pops up, almost every time he either addresses it without me ever having to mention or ask. He has no idea I'm feeling this because I'm sort of managing it before engaging him, or he might see that he's, maybe I haven't heard from him for a little bit. He's just, I don't know, he's on top of it. He's a mind reader. It's kind of funny, but it's because I found somebody who's such a secure attachment, who has no problem being committed, who has no problem communicating his feelings. It's really nice. And then I don't really feel anxious. And if I
Right.
do, it's like for a half second. And then
Right. This is so important to emphasize. Um, you didn't have to drag him into this. You didn't have to convince him to this. You didn't have to watch him grow into becoming a secure person who deals with intimacy and wants commitment. And I think that's a mistake too many women make. They bank on the potential of the guy because they love him, rather
Mhm.
than the reality of the situation is it doesn't matter how much you love him if he has trouble with commitment, if he has trouble with communication, you can't wait for him to grow into that. Your guy, the reason that you're secure is because he makes you feel that way. So um, I like telling this piece of the story because here we are 4 years after we originally worked together. This is your second love you relationship, and this is healthier and more enduring than the last one, but that was a decent relationship too. So you can compare and contrast your first love you relationship where you're taking this advice out for a spin and trying it on for size, and the growth between that relationship and the previous one, and then the leap to this new one.
Yeah, that last one, like you said, it was a good relationship. It's of course it's a little sad that it ended, but I was disappointed, but I was glad because I knew that I would be able to find somebody who maybe had the extra things that he couldn't provide. But what the difference was, the first guy was a really good guy. Again, absence of anxiety, and that is not that typical for me. All of those previous things, I did feel anxiety. I didn't know where I stood. I waited to be chosen. So with both of them, they both were very, very consistent with communicating with me. Like you said, I never had to ask any of them to call me. I would have to now on the slight like flip side there, I may have had to say, hey, I prefer to receive like with my current boyfriend. He would wait until the end of the day, sometimes the evening, to reach out. And that wouldn't make me feel very good. We talked about it. It would make me feel a little anxious because I'm like, I know he's awake. I know he's had a moment on the toilet. Like, why have I not heard from him? And so I had to at least communicate to him that I prefer to have some communication, even if it's a hey, I hope you're having a good day text sometime before the evening. Um, and he explained that he likes to wait until he has time to really provide a thoughtful message. I get it. But he took my request, and I had to take his request that he's not an all day texter, and we met in the middle. And he had no problem hearing my request, and he had no problem making adjustments. And so that was pretty early on. But the difference between the first relationship is that you've said, and I think this makes a big difference, um good boyfriends don't always mean good husbands. And so the first guy, while he was a really great guy, we got along, there wasn't any anxiety. I started to realize we were together 2 years, right? I think, yes, 2 years. I had to think about it. um he had a limit to how deep he could go emotionally, and also how deep he would go with talking through any disagreements. And we didn't really even disagree that much. But I am very introspective. I'm very self aware. And it felt like he couldn't meet me where I was. He couldn't get as far. And that just felt like, for a long term partner, somebody who doesn't want to talk through the origins or the causes, the real root causes of why maybe we're having disagreements. Not, you said this to me and I didn't like it. Okay, let's talk about why you didn't like it. What does that make you feel? Where is that coming from? He couldn't have those deeper insights. And so I realized that that just wasn't going to be somebody that would be a good match for me forever. So, um, we broke up. And this one is a therapist and a social worker, so he's obviously a little more adept and
Got
comfortable with
it.
conversations and motions. So that's
So,
promising.
so let's cut to the present, because people want to know what success looks like.
Mhm.
What was your first date? What was your first impression of him?
Of my current boyfriend.
Yeah.
It was so easy. The messages were really easy. I never had he initiates, even still, 90% of the messages he initiates. I never have to remind him or to communicate with me. And I always appreciated how direct he was. So after a date, I had such an amazing time. You're such a great person. Um, the first date though, it just was fun. I learned,
How long did you meet through an app?
yeah, through an app.
And how
Mhm.
long did it take before you met?
Well, I'd say probably a week or two. So it wasn't so long, but I like to establish some understanding of the person to get excited to see them. I'm not the person that says, here's 2 seconds, two messages, let's go for coffee. I don't like coffee. We went to a cocktail bar and had cocktails. Um, I also feel strongly that a man should come to the woman's neighborhood the first time because we lived about 30 minutes apart. So I gave him, I think, a few options for what I thought was good in my neighborhood. I like to do that because that way, not everybody knows what's nearby, but I like to give a variety of restaurants and bars that have different price points and styles so that they can still pick, but I give them kind of places that I think are good experiences or are comfortable with. So he picked one of them that was right around the corner from my house. And it was fun. I definitely felt attracted to him, but I wasn't, oh my God, over the top. I can't think straight. He's so hot, or I feel so much chemistry. It was like a nice, healthy, warm feeling. Somebody that I would look forward to having a kiss with, but I could still have a conversation with. Um, and yeah, it was
So,
easy.
when was your first kiss?
Oh, that night, I
That
think.
night. There you go. First
Yeah.
kiss. First night. I approve of this message. Um, so what was the escalation? How long did it take before he was ready to take his profile down? What was that cadence?
We saw each other, I think, about once a week. He also has a child. So, there are some days where he's just not available, which means our opportunity to connect is more limited. But he reached out, I think, at least once a day. He asked me out pretty soon after. Gosh, I don't even remember, but we probably went out within the week for our second date, within a week. Um, and then we had a third date like within a week of that. We stayed connected. I don't think there was a day where I didn't hear from him. Even we did not text all day every day. That's not his style. I like it, but it was okay that we didn't. Um, I think the third date maybe was when I mentioned the sexclusivity thing, and I mention it in part of the conversation. So as we're talking, I like it to be clear that this is how I operate. And he was totally fine with it. He actually said it was around the third date, so around the 3 week mark, that he was, not wanting to talk to anybody else. But I wasn't ready to just be all in. And I felt like I needed to make sure and give it a little more time. So it was about 1 month where we had been spending time together. I was feeling really comfortable with him. And we eventually decided, and it was actually, he said it in a weird way. So I think I wasn't, even though we said the boyfriend girlfriend words, I wasn't sure right away. I was like, are we actually? Was that not a real commitment? But then it came up again, and it's been 6 months now since.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, off the top of your head, How is this guy different from all other guys?
He is so open with his feelings and just and straightforward. I feel like with so many guys, they don't tell you, I had a great time with you and I want to see you again. And you are amazing. Like they just don't usually, they're just not so upfront. They might tell you you're cool. Uh yeah, hanging out with you is like they're just so nonchalant because it's like you can't be direct without seeming weak or something. I don't know. And he's so consistent. I never question where we stand or how he feels. He's very open with his emotions, which I think is probably above and beyond the norm. He actually just went through a really difficult family situation. And I feel really, and we've talked about, I'm so appreciative that he includes me in how he's feeling in his grief, those types of things. And he lets me provide input or insight, and he actually hears me. I actually told him, I sent him a long appreciative text, and I said that he makes me feel safe, heard, and understood. And he was really appreciative that I was saying those things about him. So
Okay. Have you, and that's obviously music to my ears, but I don't expect you to quote me to your boyfriend. Um, have you had challenges?
with him,
Yeah, or has it just been smooth sailing? Which is, again, it's great if there's been smooth sailing, but has there been anything you guys have had to overcome?
yeah, 100%. I mean, a good relationship doesn't mean that like nothing goes wrong. So, the communication thing in the beginning where I didn't hear from him, I had to kind of share, hey, it makes me feel really good to hear from you earlier in the day, uh, and not wait until your daughter's asleep, like those types of things. He went on a trip with his daughter and his brother's family. And I didn't hear from him much at all that trip. I would hear from him once a day. Sometimes I would text back and he would not respond. And that didn't make me feel good. I had a lot of anxiety while he was there. I felt like we were disconnected, but it was very early in the relationship. I think we'd only been together a month. So we didn't really have the communication talk. And this is where me learning how to temper the anxiety, I had to kind of wait and hold on to it until he got back, because I knew that having this conversation while he's on this trip where he's clearly not able to engage much wouldn't be productive. So I waited until he got back to tell him how it felt, and he understood, and when we, worked through it. Mhm.
Great job of handling that question.
Yeah.
He goes on that same trip now. Do you have the same need to hear from him in the same way?
Probably not, because I feel so secure now that if I
Right.
didn't know how he is, and I
My,
know
my,
that
my my
we
wife was in the travel industry before we got married, and she would go away for 10 days, 2 weeks to Argentina or something like that. I might hear from her twice the entire time she was gone. Um, and
I would
I
like
saw it as
to.
an opportunity to catch up on work and catch up on friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I would still, he was actually supposed to take an international trip recently. And I knew leading that maybe would hear from him because we would be on different time zones. Maybe I'd hear from him once a day, and that we probably wouldn't get to talk very often. But I didn't feel nervous about it. I felt a little nervous, but I didn't feel the way I felt with that first trip where I didn't understand what was happening and I felt anxious. I knew that I would be okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so 6 months in, you're in the I love you phase.
Mhm.
We're looking at a future, but we don't know the future phase. Yeah. And
Yes.
I'm not your parents, not trying to put pressure on you, just really trying to educate anybody who's listening. Everything you're telling me is very predictable from where I sit, which again is beautiful. But this is exactly the pacing and the feeling that we talk about in Love You over and over and over again. So I'm finding this discussion where I didn't know what was going to happen today. I'm finding it very, very validating. Um, how is he different than the guy you've pictured in your head for 40 years?
Um, I mean, he's divorced with a child. I have never dated somebody. to this, full relationship extent that had one. Um, I would have wanted my own, but I didn't want to have children for the sake of having children. I always wanted to make sure that if I was going to have kids, it was with somebody who was a fully present and good partner and we had a good marriage. And I just didn't want to do that without those things. And it didn't happen, right? I'm 43 now. So I didn't find somebody who I wanted to be my partner and father of my children. But I also didn't expect to be with somebody who has a younger child. I thought actually that I wouldn't want somebody who had a younger child. I would want a child that was older, that was easier to deal with. Um, and she is younger. And it's actually kind of fun because I know I've met her and we've spent time together, the three of us. And it feels I'm actually kind of excited about the idea now that I can be there at such an early age through all her development and formative years and have that parent experience to some extent without
Yeah.
having my own. And he's asked me, we've talked about parenting together because I want to make sure that I come from the belief of like we should be a unified front if we're the parental figures. He's asked if I would be interested in taking a parenting course with him so that we can be on the same page and we talk through. There have been plenty of difficult situations where tantrums have happened and he's exhausted and I can give him some thoughts or insights and he listens and actually appreciates my input. So it's not something that I expected, but it's different. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in addition to him having a young child, anything
Mhm.
else that was on your original list of what my ideal husband should look like that he doesn't have? I mean, I always tell the story about how my wife had almost nothing on my original list, which
Yeah.
is why those lists are kind of silly, but everybody has an idea in their head. So
Yeah.
what else did you give up to get this guy?
Yeah. He is taller than I like. I know that's weird. Most people want
No,
somebody over
said no
6 feet.
woman ever.
I know. I'm pretty short. So I prefer men under 6 feet or like 6 feet max because it's
Mhm.
just hard to hold hands and things. And he's over 6 feet. So but I mean it's nice, he happens to be half Jewish, which was not on purpose, but it's
Mhm.
nice because he does identify with that side of things. So that's a commonality that we have. But he is like I said, he's a social worker, so he doesn't make a ton of money. And that is something that I have had to come to terms with and recognize that if this is going to be my life partner, he's not going to be the breadwinner. He's not going to take me on trips. He's not going to buy me big, expensive gifts. That is a big thing that I've had to think about. But I actually had a conversation with my best friend who was sort of in the same situation, but she was him. So she was actually a similar field, lots of school debt, not making very much money. And her husband, like they worked out a whole plan. But now the roles have reversed in the sense that she is totally the breadwinner. He still does well, like comfortable, but she's the breadwinner. And she has no problem. So we had this conversation. She has no problem paying the bigger half of things or paying for things that she wants that he doesn't have to contribute to, like someone to clean their house or someone to whatever.
Yeah.
And she said, and it's interesting because my best friend is a very rational person. And she said that you can't replace someone's character. We were not talking about you or anything, I swear. And she just offered this and she was like, if he has the character that you're looking for and he's the type of person that you want to be with, then money comes and goes, but you can't replace that character. And that, I think she was like, if that's important to you, if he's who you want to be with, then that's what matters.
That's beautiful, Rachel.
Hmm. Do you want to hire her? No, I'm just kidding.
You sound just like a dating coach. It makes me happy.
Mhm.
Um, so you had a compromise in a couple things. What did he have to compromise on?
Um, his ex is tall, and he's very happy and comfortable with taller women. I am not. So I'm sure in the same way that that is something that he prefers. Um, he uh, Interestingly, because we're both in our 40s, he early on said that he realized he prefers women closer to his age. So even though would, we've men tend to find women younger more attractive. So I'm sure that there's that, right? There's probably younger, more attractive women that he would like to be with. But at least I know he appreciates that we have very similar viewpoints on a lot of things, age and maturity levels. Um, Yeah, I'm sure like physical things are probably the ones that he's compromised on, or me being the mother of his child instead of him having to deal with somebody else.
Sure,
I'm sure.
for sure. Did you have to change yourself to find love? Change your choice as men, or a little of both?
Um, I had to change my mindset. So I
But
didn't have
not your looks, not your personality.
not my looks. And actually, like I'm the oldest I've ever been. I'm the, least in shape I've ever been. Um, and I'm doing better than I've ever done in terms of like
I
relationships.
love that.
Yeah. Um, and and he's an attractive, tall guy with a great personality. So it's not like he's some schlub that I like had to pick out of the, lost and found bin. So and there were other guys that I was seeing that were also attractive and had a lot going for them. So it's not like I couldn't connect with others similarly. So no, I didn't have to change my looks. I did have to change my mindset and also learn how to lean back and observe and not drive things forward. But also I feel strongly with a lot of your philosophy that you can't say the wrong thing to the right guy. So if I was an anxious person and I had a certain set of needs, then the right person would fill that and it'd be fine.
What would you say to your younger self about how to go about choosing a partner?
Oh gosh. I would have to really coach her to know that like she is worthy and that the people that she thinks are out of her league or wouldn't want her do. And it's just about paying attention to how they show up. Um, and deciding what you want and not just waiting to let him make the choices for you.
Well said. What advice would you give to any single woman who's listening to this right now?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's so much. Um, I think what I see a lot from friends, from women in the group that come in so that are earlier in the program and haven't really had the shift. I think a lot of times, a lot of people have negative views about dating, which I think when you have those negative feelings, it shows up. Even if you think you're being the warm, fun one, people can sense it. It's coming out whether you realize it or not. And you probably don't realize it because it's so unconscious, but it's there. I think also, I think a lot of people have these like really strong criteria or expectations. And I see so much now. Oh, he did this, ick, or oh my gosh, like he asked me for coffee and I deserve dinner, unacceptable. And then they want to wash their hands of somebody. Like so many people have such strict criteria.
It's men
And
haven't read the rule book in your head.
right, right. And I think if people would just relax, go to the date, go open up your funnel. I have to tell so many of my friends and things like, is he cute or is he decent looking? Like, are you not repulsed by him? Did he write something semi-significant in his profile, something decent? Um, Go out with him, like give him a chance. because men don't always know how to take pictures. I had a friend a long time ago who had the biggest personality. She was just very vibrant and charismatic. And she was the driest texter. I always thought she was mad at me because her texts are like, hey, yes, no. So, people think that if he's not exciting me over text that or in the messages that I don't want to go out with him, like just give a lot more people a chance than you would, and there's probably some really good options within that. And if they end up not being a good option, it's okay. It's a lesson, it's an opportunity to learn something. It's an experience, and then you just move on to the next guy. But so many people are so rigid. I think that's holding them back.
What'd you like most about Love You?
I liked I liked the practical advice. I've made some good friends from the group. And I have to tell women sometimes in the group, like, it's so refreshing to have our Facebook group and to have the women that I can talk to. Because, like I said, my relationship is great, but it's not without its opportunities for working on things. And so sometimes I'll have to reach out to somebody in the group, and having someone that has an understanding of this mentality, it's a game changer, because all of my friends who have not gone through this program don't tend to make the most effective choices or have the most effective advice. So it's nice when I can talk to somebody who can help me think about things from the Love You way, or when we post in the group and everything is positive and supportive versus some
It's
other
not like those
perspective.
Facebook groups, Are We Dating the Same Guy or Burned Haystack, where
Oh my
everybody's
God.
like fangs and claws and
And those are the types of people that are what I was mentioning, where they just have such strict criteria or such negative views on things, and it's just so ineffective, to use your terms. It like our group is such a breath of fresh air from that. Those are so toxic. I had to get out of some of them because they just were so useless and affecting my mental health. Because
yeah.
even though I'm not affected by what they're posting, what happens sometimes in those groups is all you're doing is absorbing negativity. And so
Mm,
you start to assume that everything is negative.
yes.
When I was in the relationship with the last guy, he was great. I never felt anxiety. I never felt like he was cheating. But looking at those groups and seeing how so many people are getting cheated on, well, we would talk about them, but I would have to say, like, this makes me feel sometimes like, what if he is cheating and I don't know? And I didn't actually feel that way, but you absorb so much of it that it gives you this very negative perspective that doesn't exist, doesn't need to be there. It's not healthy. Ours is. That one's not.
Uh, Rachel, I really appreciate you. I I'm not I would never call myself a particularly great interviewer, but you are a great interview, and it was really lovely listening to you tell your story from where you started to where you are now, and so confident and wise and poised. And I'm just very grateful that you agreed to come on the Love You podcast with me. So thank you very much.
Wait, can I share one thing with what you just said? The
Yes, of
confident thing.
course.
I just want to like explain. I wasn't always very confident dater. And because I think yeah, it probably comes off that way. I've had people tell me that, but it wasn't always like that. And with Love You also, one of the things that I learned was when I have those moments of thinking, oh my God, I'm over 40 and I'll never find anybody, because we all have those moments. Love You helped me to go, wait a second. I've have all these examples of women who are over 40 and not perfect 20-year-old bodies, and they've found love. And so it's helped me be able to be more confident for those types of things that happen. And I was that person, and it's why I'm not like that anymore.
Well, thank you. I mean, I can't say enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My name is Evan Marquez. This is the Love You podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or Apple. Leave us a positive review. Most importantly, if you are inspired by Rachel's story, there are many ways you can get started. You can go to evanmarkkatz.com/quiz and take our Have You Been Wasting Your Time on the Wrong Men quiz. My prediction, the answer is yes. You can check out our new Love You community. The Facebook group that Rachel was talking about, it's private. It's for people who did group coaching, private coaching with me, graduates, and we've opened it up to new members. So if you go to evanmarkkatz.com/love-you, that you can go directly to that page and enroll in the community and get access to Love You and all these amazing women. And if you want coaching with me, you would go to evanmarkkatz.com/now and book a time to talk with me. That's all. That's all the promo I got for today. Dear Rachel, thank you. Listener, thank you for making the Love You podcast a success. I look forward to our next conversation next week. Take care. Bye-bye.